they want to go viral for something. They want to write one thing that just shoots them through the roof. And I try and tell them, I'm like, I've written 7 books on video game history. I wrote a pro hockey book. I've written over 45 single issue comics. I've been in over a dozen video games. And I'm still not like where I want to be yet. Peter Hogan, mentor, somebody that like I look to a lot. He's the creator of Resident Alien
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
Dark Horse Comics, and it became a TV show that was on for a little while. Resident Alien didn't become like a massive hit until he was 68 years old. He had like almost 50 years of experience before somebody finally noticed him as like a comic book writer. I try and preach to my students, you need to build a consistent library of solid work that you believe in. If you go for that one viral moment and you just want to be remembered for that one thing, it's possible that you can get it, but wouldn't it be much better to have a conversation with somebody about all of the things that you've done rather than just the one thing? Hi, I'm Patrick Hickey Jr. I'm the creator of Condrey and the editor in chief of Legacy Comix. I'm also a voice actor. You may know me from Five Nights at Freddy's, Into the Pit, Hello, Hello. You can find me at legacycomics.com. You can find me at facebook.com/ Patrick Hickey Jr. You can also find me on Instagram at instagram.com/ Patrick Hickey Jr. And you are watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. Of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by yet another multi-talented individual, voice actor extraordinaire, an author, comic writer, journalist, an overall geek. If you look behind him once I flip my camera over to his screen, you're going to say, yes, that is definitely a geek. We're joined by the creator of Condrey and many other works here that we'll talk about today, Patrick Hickey Jr. How are you doing today?
What's up, Kurt? Happy to be here.
It's
Happy to talk shop.
it's good to have you here. I can safely say by the hint of New York or something along that line.
Yeah, I'm from New York. I like my coffee and my bagels and yeah. Yes, sir. Whole life New York, Brooklyn, now Staten Island. So, like a living Billy Joel song.
Because you've had such a long career and such a varied career that when someone asks, what do you actually do? How do you explain being an associate producer, a journalist, a game historian, voice actor, and comic creator in one answer?
It's so funny because I go on Facebook live a couple of times a week and I read off the whole resume. And I do that so it takes usually like people like a minute and a half to jump onto the live. So it's just like my way of like, not standing at the camera and just staring at it like I'm in Silence of the Lambs. And but at the end of it, I just say I'm a geek and that's why you're here. So if anyone asks me what I am, I just tell them that I'm a geek. So it's so funny.
Just that terminology alone is just so all encompassing as it is. Geek, nerd,
Yeah,
as long as you don't get stuffed in a locker, you're great.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thankfully, I'm 6'4". I'm
Uh,
265 pounds, so no one was stuffing me in a locker. So yeah. But yeah, absolutely, I agree.
we're talking about Condrey here today.
It's a Contra Game Boy.
That's beautiful.
I'm a
See,
geek.
you have to have your own brand, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us about the origin of Conjure here and how that came about. Because looking at the images and just looking at your website there's so much to dive into, and it looks like a bloody good romp.
Yeah, man. Thank you. So I was 18. I had just gotten in a serious car accident, messed up my back and my neck, and went from playing hockey every day and hanging out with girls and just having so much fun being a stupid teenager to all of a sudden I am walking around with a cane and I'm just going to like the doctor and coming back, and all my friends had gone to college, and I was going to originally take a year off before college, and I just had all of this time to myself. So I started writing. At that time, I was like a closet comic book geek. Brian Michael Bendis was like my hero, mainly because he was super prolific. It was just like everything that you saw at the time in 2001, 2002. Just Brian Michael Bendis. Everything was Brian Michael Bendis. And love Neil Gaiman, love Frank Miller, love films like Highlander, They Live, Enemy Mine. Um, I was just a super geek, but in denial. And getting in the car accident allowed me to embrace my inner geek. And I started writing this comic about a New York City homeless man who was on the hunt to find out, like, um, why his father was killed. And obviously, like, you can see some Batman in there, you can see some Daredevil, you can see some Punisher, you can see a whole bunch of that noir stuff because that's what I loved. And I started writing it, and I wrote about 10 issues of it, and can't draw to save my life. Um, so I ended up starting college, and I was a journalism major, and I remember having an amazing journalism professor, Brian McDonald, who used to write for the New York Post. Wrote some great books on Louis Alexis, who was the first minority baseball player of all time, way before Jackie Robinson. So this guy was like a mentor of mine, and I showed him Condrey, and he read it, and he was like, "This is great." He's like, "But I know nothing about comics, and I'm just gonna let you know that it's probably really hard to break into comics, and you're a super good journalist." He's like, "You're one of the best students I've ever had, so you should just do that." And I was like, "Okay." And I did. But then what would happen is every 3 or 4 years, I would show somebody the Condrey script, and they would go, "This is like really good." Um, so now fast forward probably to like 2018. So now we're like 16 years later after I originally had written it, and I just threw a thing on Facebook, and I was like, "Listen, looking to find an artist. I have a series like da 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 da," and I found Kieran Quinn, and we did a 6 page ash can, and we started shopping it around. But as soon as we started shopping it around, COVID.
Of course.
So they're not. No one's buying new comic book
Yeah.
scripts in the middle of COVID. You know, everyone's buying, giant X-Men #1 and
Mhm.
whatnot's going crazy, and everyone's trying to reconnect with their youth. No one wants to read like new comics then by new creators. So what eventually ended up happening is I own and operate an entertainment website called reviewfix.com, and I interview comic book writers, voice actors, all the time. All the time. And I ended up interviewing Mark Burnell, who is the editor in chief of lesser known comics. He still is. And the interview got a ton of traffic, and he messaged me, and he's like, "If there's ever anything that I could do for you," and I've heard that. I've been a journalist for 20 years. I've heard that after every interview, "If there's ever anything that I could do
Sure.
for you," and I'm
Yeah.
just like, "Nah, we're good. This is my job. Like, this is what we do. It's not a big deal." And then it was just like, got off the phone with him, and I was just like, "I'm gonna send him that script." And I did, and a half hour later, he was like, "Yeah, I want to speak to you and Kieran. Like, I want to sign you guys."
Wow.
Um, so we ended up doing Condrey 0, 1, 2, and 3 with him, and then he really like took me under his wing, and I really saw the way he was operating his company, and I was just like, I could do this myself. So I started my own comic book company. We went to Kickstarter. We were 300% funded. We were funded in less than 3 hours, and since then we've done Condrey 4 and 5, and we've done like 5 spin-offs. I'm in the middle of a prequel novel for it, and we have other comics within the universe of Condrey, and it's been so much fun. So, but it started off as just some 18-year-old wanting to write a comic book because he idolized like Brian Michael Bendis and Frank Miller.
But you gotta love that because you're looking up to people that are successful. You're looking at people that have inspired you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
You find that through a simple scene, two shot, or a double page spread that you just open up and you've never read this before, and it sparks some type of creativity in you. And I'm glad that you went forward with it because not a lot of people actually take the time to actually do that, and I think that's a real detriment to your own personal creativity.
Absolutely. It's like I've also written 7 books on video game history
Yeah.
called the Minds Behind the Games, and I interview creators all the time. So that helps a lot because I always ask them the same questions you're asking me, like why. And I remember I interviewed Craig Broadbooks, who created NHL Face Off for the Sony PlayStation,
Yeah.
and they're some of my favorite games of all time. And I said, like, what do you think is like your biggest, attribute to, like, the biggest attribution to your success? And he's just like, just finishing. He's like, not all of my games are great.
Yeah.
He goes, a lot of them are not. He goes, but I finished all of them, and that's just something I keep in the back of my head all the time. Like, let's finish something because there's so many people in
Mm.
Starbucks that are writing right now that will never show anybody what they finish, and I pride myself in finishing the things that I start. So
Because you've interviewed like hundreds of these game developers here, did you learn anything about world building that you could apply directly to Legacy Comics as well as Condrey?
absolutely. I've interviewed the creators of a game called Wasteland,
Yeah.
which eventually became Fallout, and listening to them just talk about how like every character's voice matters in their game. We're talking Fallout is a game that has
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of NPCs. Um, that, and I'm a big fan of Quentin Tarantino,
Yeah.
who can take any character from any of his movies and make a movie about that character.
Yeah.
Um, so I've definitely like incorporated that into my storytelling devices. I also am a big believer in like what Frank Miller says, where he says you have to know the ending of your story before you start writing your story. Um, you have to know why you're creating characters. You know, it's just like I remember when Elektra was killed, so many people were pissed off, and Frank Miller was essentially like, she was born to die. She was born to trigger this emotional response in Matt
Mhm.
to take Daredevil to another place that he had never been before. So it's just like whenever I create characters, I sit down and I'm like, okay, why am I creating this character? You know, well, what's their purpose? How do they serve the larger universe? And then yeah, like being able to speak to so many different creators in video games and in comics. I mean, I've interviewed
Oh yeah.
um David Mack. I've interviewed tons of Michael Oeming. I'm trying to think of who else. Mark Miller.
Hmm.
Tons of great comic book writers, and just hearing them tell me stories. Like I had Mark Miller tell me a story that like after like Civil War, Stan Lee told him, "This is all great and dandy, but just want you to know that like you're playing in my sandbox. You're playing with characters that I've created." And no one's going to really like remember you until you make your own characters. And that's like one of the reasons why he was just like he started to really focus on his own characters. And it's super important because it's like if Marvel called me right now and was like, we want you to write you know, Venom or Spider-Man or Wolverine, I would go okay, but then I would say, I don't know, I got some really cool stuff going on over here, you know? So it's I've learned a lot from all of the interviews that I've done. I think my journalistic backbone, the foundation that I built in journalism has definitely played a role in the creation of all of my characters. Because when you think about it too, great journalism is all about dynamic dialogue.
Mm.
It's the types of quotes that you get from the people that you're interviewing. How much can you get them to open up? How much can you get them to share? So when you're writing fiction, it's very similar. The character is depressed. How depressed is he or she or they? How deep do we want to take this? You know, so it's just like if you have experience talking to real people about real problems, when you create fictional characters that are based in some type of reality, it helps.
I love it. That's just great because when it comes to character development, I think a lot of people just focus on the main character. They don't focus on the supporting characters. And I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
real detriment to the world you're creating. And I find sometimes that, especially in film scripts, they'll just throw in these characters as either, you know, this is a particular character that is just here for one scene and then gone, or
Mm-hmm.
tragically killed off, but has no real impact on the story other than you just spent 50 grand on how to blow up a boat, you know?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
from a comic perspective, I think, especially since you're writing more than just a single issue, you're building a world, you're building a series. It really helps in terms of what exactly we're trying to showcase, enjoy about what you're trying to create. As a first time reader, as someone that has never looked into it here, what are you hoping these readers to take away from, say, issue one that you got better with when it came to issue five or six?
I think in the beginning it was very raw
Mm.
and it was very gritty. And I think that's what attracted people. Great art. I think as the story goes on, you start to see more of my influences. Like in the beginning, you're like, this person loves Frank Miller. This person loves Garth Ennis. This person definitely likes Wolverine and the Punisher and like badass, tough as nails characters. And then as you go along, you start to see influences of Tarzan.
Mhm.
You start to see influences of Count of Monte Cristo.
Mhm.
You start to see a little bit of comedy, a tiny bit of comedy, just enough to lighten things up because it's just like we're talking. This is like Brooklyn in like this like dirty, disgusting environment, and there's you've got to find a reason to like this character besides the fact that he can just like literally beat up anybody that he wants to beat up, you know? So it's just like over issues like 3, 4, and 5 we've started to like really show like that human side of him. And like I said, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I've been a college professor for 20 years and I
Mhm.
taught English composition for 18 and I've taught journalism for 20. So it's just like I love to read and I mean, I'm writing a prequel novel to Condrey right now, which is basically like his father's story, leading up to his death that we don't see in the comics, and I'm just like throwing in things, and I'm just like, that's a little Hawthorne, Like I wasn't expecting that, you know, like this character has a cane, and then it just I immediately think of this Hawthorne story that I teach all the time, and I'm just like, I'm not gonna rip it off, but I'm just like, oh my god, I just did that instinctually, like where this character has something in
Yeah.
common in young Goodman Brown. This is pretty cool. So definitely like as we go on, there's more depth. In the beginning, it's just a lot of fun, and he's just like this ass kicking machine. But then
Sure.
by the time you get to issue 3, 4, 5, you're like, this guy is like a tortured soul, you know, and he just wants answers that like he may not ever get, and the people that have them do not seem any don't have any inclination to ever give them to him. So like, how is this going to end?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
The fact that you know your ending, as you previously mentioned, helps.
yeah,
But do you think that all stories or all comics have to have a happy ending?
no, no, absolutely not. And the thing is, the ending of this, I mean, this is probably going to go, like, I can see Condrey, like, the original arc that I wrote, going like 15, maybe 16 or 17 issues. And then
Okay.
after that, like, we could take it in another direction. But, like, after those 15 or 16 issues, like, he's going to have, like, the conclusion
Mm.
that he's not going to have the conclusion that necessarily that he wanted, but there's going to be a sense of finality
Okay.
to it. So, but it can definitely continue from from there. But it's just like, I mean, some of my favorite endings in comics are the ones that just you go, what? Like like Daredevil, Guardian Devil, when you find out that like Mysterio was the guy like ruining Daredevil's life, and the reason why is because he didn't know who Spider-Man was. He knew that there was like this whole clone thing, and he was like, if he's gonna have one more battle, he might as well go for somebody. And since he didn't know if he was gonna get the Spider-Man, he's like, I'll go after the next guy, and just like ruined his life. And I mean that made me a fan of Kevin Smith's
Yeah.
comic book writing for the rest of my life. But like that was an ending where so many people were like, oh, it's terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, no, no, no. It totally like made you feel something. And I think that's always my goal. Whenever I'm editing and I'm going through a comic, even an ash can that's only like 6 to 8 pages, I'm like, I need to get people to feel like on every single page. There needs to be like a line of dialogue or a panel that somebody just goes and looks at it, wants to look at it twice, because so many times people just read comics and if they read it they close it, they put the scotch tape back on, and it goes in a box, and it's just like my whole thing is like I want people to revisit my work. So to answer your question, it's just like I think any ending that makes someone feel is an acceptable ending.
Do you find that in, especially as an associate professor in teaching this next generation of writers and journalists, do you feel that they understand the gravitas as to what they're particularly looking for in their own writing?
I think the biggest problem that I'm seeing with my students over the past 4 or 5 years is that they want to go viral for something. They want to write one thing that just shoots them through the roof. And I try and tell them, I'm like, I've written 7 books on video game history. I wrote a pro hockey book. I've written over 45 single issue comics. I've been in over a dozen video games. And I'm still not like where I want to be yet. Another one of my big mentors, somebody that like I look to a lot. His name is Peter Hogan, and he's the creator of Resident Alien
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah.
Dark Horse Comics, and it became a TV show that was on for a little while and stuff. And he was a music journalist before he got into comics, and interviewed tons of great musicians. But like Resident Alien didn't become like a massive hit until he was 68 years old.
Hmm.
You know, so we're talking he had like almost 50 years of experience before like somebody like finally noticed him as like a comic book writer. So I try and preach to my students like you need to build a consistent library of solid work that you believe in. Like if you go for that one viral moment and you just want to be remembered for that one thing, it's possible that you can get it, but wouldn't it be much better to have a conversation with somebody about all of the things that you've done rather than just the one thing that you've done? I mean, I have those problems myself where it's just like when I go to a con, I have people come over to me and they want to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's because I play the main character in the new Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit game, which is great. It's awesome. It's the highest rated Five Nights at Freddy's game
Mm-hmm.
of all time. But I'm like, I feel like there's so much more to me than that, you know. And then when people talk to me just about the comics, then I want to talk to them about the minds behind the games. And when they talk about the minds behind the games, then maybe I want to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. Like,
Sure.
I think it's just like you want. I try and preach to my students that like they 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 should be the sum of all parts. Like someone should look at them and be like, you are this, you are this, you are that. And that's why I teach them how to edit in addition to writing, and I teach them how to take photos, and I teach them how to lay out for the web, and I teach them how important social media is. um because it's just like, I don't want them to just go in and say, I have students, my first day of the semester was just this last Wednesday, and I asked them, like, what do you want to do? And it's always like one thing, and I'll go, well, what else do you want to do? And they're like, I haven't thought about it. And I'm like, you have like another 16 weeks to figure it out. Give me like two or three things that you want to do. Don't limit yourself to that. So yeah, I'm having I wouldn't say a problem, but like an issue with a lot of my students, where they're not dreaming enough,
Mhm.
because it's just like they see all these other people that are like known for like one thing, and they just want to be like known for one thing. It's rough. It's a tough ecosystem out there.
It gets to the point where you're limiting yourself in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form, and it's very detrimental to your own
Mm-hmm.
mindset. Because if you're pigeonholed, I mean, you see this with actors all the time. You know, they're known for this particular role they did 20 years ago, and all of a sudden, every single other role they get pitched is the same exact thing when they
Yeah.
want to be a comedian or something like that. It's
Absolutely.
pretty crazy how that all comes about. But they're also young too. They haven't really experienced the world and the crushing defeat of the world or the wonderful highs of the world either.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, there's only so much you can do with them, but I'm glad you're at least guiding them towards, you know, a positive future, whatever that may be. So you mentioned hockey, of course. I love the Red Wings. Sorry, because I'm from Canada. I'm from
I almost wore my Gordie Howe. Well, this is a Gordie Howe jersey.
yes,
This is a
exactly. Yep.
Gordie Howe Whalers
Whalers.
jersey.
Yep.
I also have a Gordie Howe Red Wings jersey. He's one of my favorite players of all time. So I'm an Islander fan,
I
but
won't
yeah.
hold that to you, but I mean it's fine.
Listen, I'm excited about us this year. So
Well, it's just like the Maple Leafs are excited about every year. You know, it is what it is.
that's true. We don't talk about the Maple Leafs in this
Yeah,
house
we don't either.
after John Tavares
Yeah,
put his
yeah,
pajamas on.
yeah.
So.
Anyhow,
Hmm.
being hockey fans that we are, aces over Brooklyn. You know, what did hockey culture and Brooklyn sports teach you about grit, violence, and loyalty that feeds into Legacy Comics?
That year that I covered that team was one of the most enjoyable years of my journalistic career. I got to go on the road with the professional hockey team. They told me everything, and the thing was, no one was covering them.
Hmm.
They had like three or four other small newspapers covering them. The New York Times came once when Ron Duguay played there, um, for a game for charity. Um, so they knew that like I was their guy. It's like I totally felt like I was in the middle of Slapshot,
Yeah.
and I was the reporter in Slapshot, except that I can smell like the basura, the garbage. Like if you guys watch Slapshot, you know that
Oh
like the
yeah.
reporter believes everything Reggie Dunlop tells him, and I was different. I was like, yeah, let's not do, nah, you're lying, this and that, blah blah blah. But it's just like that there was like two, at least it was like 1.65 fights, I think, every game, every game. And it was just so much fun, and the fans ate it up and they loved it, and it was like it was over before it even started. It was like one season, they lost in the finals, but like I was there for every game, and it taught me a lot. It taught me, there were so many nights where I was exhausted, and I was going through a breakup at the time, and I was teaching during the day, and it was just like, it was, sometimes it was like the last place in the world where I wanted to be, but then I knew that if I didn't write about this team, no one would know what was going on. And then when the New York Times called me and asked for photos, and I had other places ask me if they could like start using my articles, then all of a sudden it started to be like, okay, you're doing work that people care about. And I think I didn't start to really get like the notoriety that I wanted until the end, and then it was over. And then I remember when they started the FHL, they asked me to be the head of media relations based on like all of the work that I had done independently. Um, so those were all learned lessons. Like, so when I started Legacy, I'm like, it's gonna be ice cold for a long time. No one is gonna know like what we're doing, but we have to just continue, because all it takes is one big podcast or one big article or one big TV spot or any of those things, and you can blow up. And we've had all of those things at Legacy, and we still, wave up and down and stuff like that. So it just like, it just taught me to I always play the long game with everything. Patience always comes first. no rash decisions, you know. So that year definitely gave me a backbone to understand that like things are not always going to go your own way, and you have to stay positive and you have to believe in what you're doing.
That's amazing. Like, I was just doing some quick searches on you there, and I was finding different articles and things like that. I mean, I just love the fact that the trajectory of your career has been just so entertaining and so amazing in
Thank you.
so many different fields. Like, as an interviewer myself, I think that we don't get a lot of credit being hosts of podcasts, and we don't get
Mm-hmm.
a lot of credit being journalists in that respect. They'll see the
Yeah.
article, they'll barely look at the byline,
Yep.
just to give you the proper credit where credit's due. There, here.
Yeah.
But has there ever been an interview, either in your journalism career or in writing dialogue or anything along that line, where it's just been too hard for you to write, where you just can't get the words out?
No. That's it's like my students will go, well, what if I get writer's block? And I
Mm.
go, I can't help you. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I've never gotten it. And because this is the thing, um, and I have to say this as kindly and nicely as possible and not go full Brooklyn. I'm not scared to write crap, because the thing is, like, as a journalist, it's not about how well you write, it's about making your deadline and getting something out there when people need to read it. So, are there articles that I look back and go, "Oh, I probably wouldn't have done that way." Sure, but was it in an effort to get the facts out as quickly and as fairly as possible? Yes. Um, so journalistically, um, no, that's never happened to me. Writing fiction, though, there have been times when I've written like 20 pages and in like a day, just nonstop, like written like 6 or 7 thousand pages just on the computer for like 4 or 5 hours, and then look back and said, "This is all crap, and this all needs to go." And but the thing is, I think writing 6 or 7 thousand words of crap is so much better than just
Yeah.
staring at the screen and not writing anything. Because there'll be times when I'll go, you know what? There was something in that 6 or 7 thousand words, so let me put that on another file. Let me leave that there, and then come back 2 or 3 weeks later and start to build it. So I mean, I'm not scared to fail. I'm not scared of other people's opinions. It's just like I've met so many people over the last like
Yeah.
20 years that are just like, oh, you do all this stuff. I just don't get it. And I'm like, you won't. You
Mhm.
won't. It's not, oh, you're a full-time college professor. You support your family as a college professor. You don't have to do all this other stuff. And I'm just like, but who would be happy just like going to work and coming home?
Mhm.
It's like I need like more than that. Like my daughter is 9. I'm sorry, she just turned 9, but she wrote her first comic at 6, and now my son is about to turn 6 in May, and we're working on his first comic now. When I saw like 8 months ago that my son was reading, I'm like, oh, we're doing this, and my wife is like, oh, you can't even like wait a little bit. I'm like, nope, we're writing a comic together. We're gonna publish it, the whole 9 yards, and so it's like I want to just infect my whole family with this work ethic and with this drive, and to have fun and to ask questions. And like my kids were watching Inside Out yesterday,
Oh yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, Daddy interviewed the girl, the voice actor," and my wife was like, "Yes." And she's like, yeah, and Daddy said that the voice of Fear also plays Mickey in Bob's Burgers, and Daddy used to see him all the time when he was an editor at NBC. His name's like Bill something, and my wife is like, yes, I know, but it's like I want my kids to be able to have that type of work ethic and to just not be scared to just produce stuff because it makes you happy and because you want to share it.
Well, I think you have a good parenting approach when it comes to this, because from a single son perspective, having discipline but also having the ability to have no fear is a huge factor that I think a lot of the newer generation doesn't quite have. And I'm glad you're at least guiding them towards that. And I can't wait to see what they do in the next 10, 15, 20 years, if I'm still
Yeah,
alive, and
same
we'll
here.
go from there.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. Like,
Thank you.
I love that, because it's just so many times in the world you'll get people of authority saying you should focus on this one job, or you're really good at this. But
Yeah.
if you don't want to do that, like for me, I went into computers, but by 20 years in the industry, I switched to communication, media, and film. So, like,
Yeah.
I got burnt out with computers. I wanted to do something different. And it was just
Hmm.
like, you do what you can to, one, survive, and two, find a different outlet. So, being a 33-year-old painting color wheels is something that I never thought I'd be doing. So,
Yeah, man.
voice acting is a huge factor. I know a lot of voice actors. I love voice actors. I love the fact that you just have such a versatility in terms of depth and breadth and everything like that, and cadence. When you look at everything that you've done from a voice acting perspective, how does being inside so many characters' heads change the way you write dialogue?
Well, see, the thing is, the way I started as a voice actor was I started as a dialogue editor for an
Oh,
indie game.
okay.
So what happened was, I get video games sent to me every day to try to play. Video game developers be like, Pat, play this for like 15 minutes. Tell us what you think,
Nice.
and then they'll throw me like my independent contractor rate for that. So I'll get paid a little bit to try their game and to give them some notes and
Sure.
stuff. And I found this game called Padre
Mm-hmm.
that was eventually released on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, Steam, the whole nine yards. And I thought it was a lot of fun, but I felt like the dialogue was really, can't say it in a nice way, crappy. Because the guys were from Bulgaria and English was their second language, and you could tell that English was their second language. So I went in and really started cleaning up the dialogue, and all the checks cleared, and they were great guys to work with. And then I remember, like, right before we were going to go live on Kickstarter, um, they told me that the voice actor left for the main character of the Padre. And when you think of the Padre, you think of a Hispanic priest,
Yeah.
you know? And for some reason, this guy sounded like, oh, what's his name? The comedian, the English comedian with the long black hair, Brand,
Oh,
Russell
Russell
Brand.
Brand. Yeah.
It's like, I'm like a priest and I'm walking around, and it's like, wow. And it's supposed to be this scary game about this priest stuck in a mansion with zombies and trying to find out. And just editing all of the dialogue, I'm like, I don't hear this voice.
Nice.
So they're like, in a very nice way, they were cursing, but they were like, "We are effed." They kept saying, and they sounded like the Count from Sesame Street,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
"Oh, we're full, yeah, we're full." And I'm just like, "You're not." And they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Let me audition." I'm like, I think I have a good idea of the way this character is supposed to sound. So I had never done voice acting up until that point, but like I had been in bands, I sang, I played
Mhm.
guitar, I had made prank phone calls for 30 years. I'm a product of the 80s and the
Yep.
90s, the Jerky
Yeah.
Boys
Yeah.
and Tube Bar and all the good stuff. And
Nice.
I've always been good at that deep baritone, like the following movie is rated R, And I'm like, that's not the way this priest is supposed to sound. But they wanted him to have an English accent. So I'm like, okay, let's see. If we can kind of combine like that deeper baritone with an English voice, like, my name is Alexander and I am the Padre. And they were like, oh, that's it. And I sent them like my little demo with some of the dialogue, and they were like, can you record everything like right now? And I'm like, okay. And I did it. And like 4 hours later, I was in the game. We ended up getting picked up by Feardemic. They released the game, and then what happened was all the video game developers that I had worked with on my books and as a journalist were like, "Wait, you're a voiceover actor now?" And it was like, "Can you do a trailer?" And it'd be like, "Coming soon to PlayStation 5 and Epic, blah 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 blah." And I started a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there, and
Nice.
then people were like, "Can you do Macho Man Randy Savage?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, let me tell you something, brother. The flame, yeah, the fire, yeah." And I got on WrestleQuest and I did 75 voices
Wow.
for that game. Um, and then the Renfield movie kind of tanked in theaters, and they were supposed to have all these big actors do the game. And they were like, Pat, you think you could do all of the voices in the Renfield game? And I'm like, sure, no problems. Then I did that, and then we did Food Fight, and that's a story for another
Yeah.
day. But
Yeah.
then we did Five Nights at Freddy's, and then in between that, little smaller games and things like that. So over the past like 10 years, I've done like 20 games, and it's just been a lot of fun. But to answer your question, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
While I'm reading, I try and hear those voices, like to make like a Randy Orton reference. I hear voices in my head. They come to me. They understand. They talk to me. It's just like reading a script. I have to try and like find a voice, and then I just try and replicate it to the best of my ability.
What does Condrey sound like then?
Condrey has like this like really deep husky like Brooklyn accent. Yeah, I'm walking down the street, because he's been on the street for
Yeah.
so long, and he's obviously not drinking a lot of water and stuff. Like and just imagine his throat all like mucusy and stuff all the time, and walking, and he's just really, and the thing is he's big too.
Mm.
He's like 6'8", he's like 300 pounds, so he is just like pure like intimidation. But the thing is, at the same time, he's like this like kind of like broken puppy inside, because it's like he lost his parents at a super young age, and it's just like I could definitely see him listening to like "Somebody to Love" by Queen on the street, homeless outside like a Dunkin' Donuts. Like the guy legit like just like he wants to be like loved and hugged, and just he's just scary, and he's beat up and he's scarred. And like our newest issue, Man's Best Friend, is about a story of him just like walking through the forest of like upstate New York, trying to get back to like Brooklyn, and he finds a dog, and he befriends the dog, and by the end of the story the dog's gone. It's just like the guy can't even like have a friend for like a week, so but yeah, I definitely imagine him having like this husky, like just intimidating, scary voice. But at the same time, like imagine somebody like that saying that they love you. It wouldn't come out right.
Yeah.
And even though he probably feels that more than like any person could feel that, and he wants that more than any person could want that, it won't convey properly, so
Has writing like this comic and your other series helped heal you in some way, shape, or form?
oh, absolutely. So it's like I tell people all the time with like video games, like Fallout 3
Mm.
got me through my first year of teaching. Fallout New Vegas got me through my first year of graduate school. Fallout 4 I bought and then like never played, and then when my wife got diagnosed with breast cancer, I found myself home with a lot more time, and then like spending a half hour a day in the wasteland while she was asleep and the kids were asleep playing, like, was totally like a rejuvenating factor. And then like all of these comics, the Condrey, the Job, Brooklyn Bleeds, all of them, they've all like given me a way to like connect with parts of myself. There's definitely parts of myself in Condrey. There's definitely parts of myself in the Job. There's definitely parts of myself in Brooklyn Bleed. So it's like I've seen so many indie comics make themselves the character. It's just like, oh, Tony Carrazza is Tony Dangerous, and it's just like, to me that's a hack, like a
Mhm.
hack. You don't do so. For me, it's just like I try and find like small experiences. Like I was writing Maximum Checkout, the prequel novel in Condrey. I still am. I've been writing it, but I was writing Condrey's birth.
Mm.
Um, and his dad is watching him being born, and it's just like I would be crazy to not use some of the experiences that I've had watching two children being born. So some of that like creeped in. Like obviously, like I did a lot of research and like found out like what was a baby delivery different in 1988 than it would be in like 2020. Yes, there's several differences. I found out several of them.
Mhm.
Um, and Tiffany Condrey's mom didn't have an epidural, so how would that birth be different than my wife's, who had an epidural both times, and this and that? But it's just like the feelings of the main character watching his son being born into this world. There's definitely some of me, like of what I experienced. Writing all of this stuff has been super cathartic and super fun and super enjoyable and super tough sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of it I write like on my phone when I'm putting my kids to bed,
Sure.
or when I'm on the bus or the train on the way to work, and then like when everybody goes to bed, I transfer everything to the laptop and I start cleaning it up and tightening it. So it's just like I can totally look back on some comics and be like, I wrote this while I was putting my daughter to bed when she was 2, and it just makes it mean that much more.
I love it. That's amazing here. Um, you've been published across the New York Times, Daily News, Yahoo, and so many more that I would have to spend the next 10 minutes talking about them. What's one thing the mainstream media still doesn't understand about indie comic grind that you're living day to day?
They have no idea. They have zero clue. So it's like I remember we had a comic about 2 years ago called Midland Beach Turkey Ninjas. And I moved to Staten Island from Brooklyn. And when I moved to Staten Island from Brooklyn, I noticed that there was tons of wild turkeys all over Staten Island, and they would attack you like on site.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're big, and to the point where like they would scare my kids. So I naturally was like, I need to write a comic about this. Because I saw that they got mentioned on the Colbert Report and all this stuff, and they were like, people knew about them, but like no one was really doing something cool. So I basically wrote this like dystopian one shot that was about the turkeys and how they had formed like this yakuza like gang that had taken over Staten Island.
Nice.
And what ends up happening is we got like over 1,000 pre-orders, and the local newspaper wrote about me, and then the New York Post called me, and they did a great job. They were a lot of fun. They sent a photographer over and stuff like that. But the interviewer just interviewed me over the phone, and it was just like I read the article, and the article was great, but it was just like skimming the surface, and it was just like it didn't get to like the heart of why
Sure.
the comic was created. And the thing is, it's just like I tell people all the time, it's like with the Five Nights at Freddy stuff. I don't want to be remembered
Mhm.
as phone guy from Five Nights at Freddy's my entire life. It was a great honor. I'm the only other person besides Scott Cawthon to ever voice phone guy. I'm so happy for the experience. I love it. I will sign Funko for the rest of my life. But it's just like at the same point, I do not want to be remembered as the guy that wrote the comic about turkeys. I want to be remembered as the guy that wrote Condrey, that wrote all these books on video game history, that taught for over 20 years, that was a good husband, that was a good father.
Sure.
And I feel like the mainstream is just like, oh, this is the new hot comic. This is what it's about. Here, check it out. And then that's it.
Mhm.
Gone. And it's just so easy that for somebody to just to be like to have like 5 seconds of fame. It was the same thing. We did a comic for a off Broadway play, and we did all of the backgrounds for them. The name of the play was called Lone Star, and we got on like New York One, which is like a big New York news station, Spectrum News,
Mhm.
and we had a billboard in Times Square with our art on it for like a month, and it was great. And we sold a ton of comics and stuff. But it was like after the show was over, gone. It's just like I would love for a mainstream journalist to like talk to somebody that's had like success in indie comics, and just have them talk about how like you can have like one big success and then it's gone, and then you have to go create another big success and then it's gone. Like the success is so fleeting that you have to constantly create stuff, and I've never seen that broken down by a journalist, showing like that individual hustle. Like I mean, just this month alone, we're releasing two new Condrey books. We just released a issue of two different series that I have. I have like 8 other books in post production. So it's just like we're just constantly grinding, and that grind is never spoken about.
Mhm.
It's just about, well, what's new, what's hot,
Yeah.
or is it new? Is it hot? Does it connect to anything that's going on? Because I mean, the turkey book I did solely on the fact that like it was public. Like it was a
Yeah.
big thing. It was like a cash grab, but it turned out to be a fun one and well written and well illustrated. But it was just like it's tough. It's super tough, and mainstream news just does not. A lot of the comic book websites too.
Yeah.
If you're not at Marvel, DC, Image, and stuff like that, you could be doing great work. But if you're like, oh, are you in Diamond? How many comic book shops are you in? Blah
Mhm.
blah blah blah. They don't want to hear from you. It's so hard to get new eyes.
Yeah.
So that's why I do podcasts like this.
Well, I find it funny because I've been doing this for 18 years. I started interviewing webcomic creators. That was how I started this show, because there was no platform back in 2008 for those types of amazing, creative, talented people
Yeah.
to have a platform. And so many of them, and I look back at that, and so many of them nowadays are literally either working for Marvel or DC or Image or something else, or they become so successful with their own independent creations that the world has taken notice, especially like young
Mhm.
adult authors like Raina Tegelmeier and things like that. So,
Mhm.
like, there's so many talented people out there. If they could just get that 5 minutes of fame in a 30-second world, it
Yeah.
would be so
Yeah.
much. It would be so amazing, truly.
Absolutely.
Kind of piggybacking off what you talked about here about not getting that the focus or attention that you rightly deserve, to be perfectly honest. What about the creator that's listening or watching this show who's juggling a day job, family, their passion project? What's one concrete habit or reel that allowed you to build Condrey Legacy Comics on top of an already full life?
So I tell my students all the time, do not go to bed until you are completely exhausted, until you cannot keep your eyes open on Saturdays, on Sundays. Like I pride myself in knowing that like my wheels are turning when everyone else is sleeping. When everyone else is given up, um I'm still going. Like you could probably see the dartboard
Mm-hmm.
behind me. Um I'm in a dart league, and we just won our division, and there were so many times when we were like down like 5-0, and I'm like, guys, are we here? Like, what are we doing? Like, can we wake up? You know, and then it would be my turn to play, and I would win, and then I'd slap somebody in the back of the head, or like slap somebody, you know, in the back, and be like, can we not make fools out of ourselves? Can we do what we have to do today?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm blunt, I'm hard sometimes, but like at the end of the day, like my goal is to just get a little bit better than I was yesterday. Will Ospreay is like one of my favorite professional wrestlers. He's a maniac. He's like a glorified stuntman. Um, he's one of those guys that adheres to that. Kyle Fletcher is another amazing wrestler that says like he aims to make himself 1% better every day, and it's just like 1% is not a lot,
Mhm.
you know. Um, but it's just like, you know, I talk to other novelists, and they'll be like, oh well, I just want to write 500 words a day. If I could write 500 words a day that I'm proud of, then I'm happy. So when I hear that from a novelist that like I respect, I'll go, okay, so if they're gonna write 500, I'm gonna write 750, and then my 750 turns into 1,000, and then I start doing 1,000 words every day, and then I can finish a 90,000 word novella or short novel in 3 months, and then spend more time editing it to clean it up. That's what I try and do, you know. So it's just like I try and tell my students and anyone that's interested, it's just like that sweat equity is something that could like never be taken away from you, because it's like if you're half-assing it, pardon my French, it's gonna catch up. It's gonna catch up after a long time. And then I know so many people in video games and comics that have failed forward.
Mhm.
So it's like they did a crappy job somewhere else, but somehow they got a promotion to another place. And you have people that just make their way through an industry on the backs of like other people's good work, or just being able to speak and get opportunities that somebody. A lot of creators have this problem where they are so invested in their creation
Mhm.
that it becomes such a big piece of them, and they don't understand brand management, and they don't understand that they have to try and sell this to somebody, because if no one buys it, then no one, then you don't make money from it. If you don't make money from it, it's a hobby. You know, I had a comic book creator the other day go to me, why is Legacy Comics successful? And I said, because Legacy Comics pays for itself. That I have never had to take any money out of my personal bank account to pay for any of my stuff. And there have been several times over the course of the last 5 years where I was like, oh my God, Christmas is going to suck this year. Thanksgiving is going to be tight. And I was able to like use my work from Legacy to get the money that I needed to support my family. So like that to me makes Legacy successful. But it's like I want to do a lot more than that. So it's just like I would tell a young person, like, put the time in, put the effort in, don't stop. You're going to see as you get older, so many people are going to stop. So many people are going to give up, and they're going to use their sick parents as an excuse. They're going to use their wife as an excuse. They're going to use their kids as an excuse. They're going to use their declining health as an excuse. But it's just like if you could put all of that away and you could spend just like a half hour to an hour a day on these things that you're passionate about, you'll be super successful. George Carlin, one of my favorite stand-up comedians of all time, he said that like people should just have a half hour a day to just daydream, to just look out the window. And my whole thing is like, yeah, you can daydream for a half hour, but then that means you got an hour of stuff that you need to do. So that's what I would tell a young creative, like really put the time in and really know what it is that you want to do, and then just do it. You know, you have the time. If you manage your time properly, you have so much more time than you think of, than you can think.
Everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Ooh. It's a combination of people, but if I had to say like one person, it's so weird. It's Diamond Dallas Page. He's a
Mhm.
professional wrestler, messed up back, um, older than everybody else, still became a world champion. Messed up back, still started a successful business as a yoga instructor. Used that work to rehabilitate several wrestlers that were like well past their prime, or some that people thought were gonna die. Best-selling author, despite not knowing how to read for a large portion of his life and being dyslexic. So somebody like that that just continues to like find new ways to be successful. Um, yeah, definitely up there. And I had the opportunity to interview him in 2006, so definitely cool. So Diamond Dallas Page, absolutely.
From a professional standpoint, you're a successful associate professor, comic creator, reviewer, journalist. The list goes on and on. Voice actor as well too. Professionally, you have done so many things in your amazing career. But do you consider yourself personally successful?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because if for some reason on Wednesday, when I'm supposed to get my paycheck, If it doesn't come, it's going to be a situation. And I'll be okay, but I won't be great. And that's not to say that like success is about money, but success is about like not having to worry if one thing goes wrong. True success is you being able to say that went wrong, but that's okay. We're gonna pivot. We're gonna do that. True success is not having to like be dependent on like one thing going right. So I've had my students ask me a similar question and like, do you feel like you've made it? And it's the same thing. It's just like, no, I haven't made it. I've done a lot of cool things that like 99.9% of people would love to do. They'd love to star in a video game. They'd love to write books. They'd love to own a comic book company. They'd love to own an entertainment website. They'd love to interview the people that I've interviewed. But at the end of the day, if I don't get paid, I don't eat, and the lights may flicker for a little while before I could call up Con Edison. So yeah, I'm not nearly as successful as I want to be yet. I'm not successful yet. No.
Okay. The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
I try and break it down to smaller parts. And it's very difficult to when you look at ratings on your books or what people say because a lot of the times people just won't get like what you're doing. Um, and I've gotten some great advice from video game developers like Nisha Sawasan who made all of the Wonder Boy games, and he's basically like once you create something and it's off to the masses, it's not yours anymore. So however anyone feels about it, that's their opinion. It's true, they own it, and it doesn't take away from anything that you've done because you actually created something that made somebody feel something. So that's helped. But sometimes I'll just look at something that I've done, and if I hear like a chorus of something of somebody saying something, then I know I have to take a closer look at it. So that's really like what I do. If I see that like people are saying things, I'll say like if this was done intentionally and they don't get it, that's one thing. But if it's something that like a mistake that I made, then it's just like it gets put like in that part of your brain where like whenever you create something else, you make sure that you don't do that ever again. You know? So it's just like trying to crack down on things that are avoidable. Sometimes some things are completely unavoidable. And then the thing is, in comics, as a writer and a letterer, there's so many things that you can do because you're not drawing the book, you know. And then sometimes you may get an artist to the point where like they're done and they're not going to give you any better than what they have. So it's just about making the most and the best of what you have. So I feel like even if a project doesn't turn out exactly the way that you would like, if you did the best that you could in the time that you had with the resources that you had, even if it's a failure, just the fact that you finished it and put it out gives you something to learn from to apply to the next project.
The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way. And the fact that you already have the younger generation with you creating comics is an amazing starting point for their upcoming creativity. And I can't wait to see what they do in the future. But you're also guiding the next generation of students as well too as journalists. So you're getting double creativity points when it comes to supporting the next generation. How can the next generation support the generation that follows them?
I feel like kindness isn't as easily dispersed as it used to be. Everyone is so glued to their phone or their screen, and they feel like their time is so valuable. When I just said before, I feel like we have so much more time than we think. And I feel like the younger generation are just so obsessed with like the here and now. They don't plant seeds. They don't take time out for other people. And just like I easily 5 or 6 times during the day, I'll go to my kids and I'll be like, "What's up? Are we good? Do we need anything? Do we want to do something?" And sometimes it'll be something as silly as my son saying, "I want to draw with you," and I'm like, "Let's go, let's do it." And I feel like the younger generation, they need to take the time, the generation that's going to be mentoring, like my son, basically the people that are in the this is crazy thought. The students that I'm teaching now are probably going to be my son's bosses and my daughter's bosses. Um, and it's scary to me that like my kids will have a better sense of empathy, honesty, integrity, ethics than they will. Um, but it's like I really think that like if this generation of like 15 to like 25, if they spent a little bit more time focusing on helping other people, because you, this is the thing too, you learn so much sometimes helping other people, and like what you say in the moment about yourself, sometimes you learn more that way than you do doing things by yourself. And I feel like this generation really needs to go out and do stuff like that. The thought of an unpaid internship to an 18-year-old is so foreign to them, when so many of the places that I wrote for when I first started, I wasn't getting paid. When I started my website for the Brooklyn Aces that provided me with all of the content to write this book like 20 years ago, um, I was paying for that website out of my own pocket. And it wasn't until the middle part of the season that I had ads to start paying myself back for all of the money that I had laid out for the website and for everything else. And it's just like, I feel like if we got back to a lot of that stuff, we just live in a weird time where it's just like you'll have politicians say like, oh, it's exploitation, these kids can't work for free, and da, da, da. It's like, it's not exploitation, because what you're getting a lot of the times is experiences that are worth so much more than minimum wage. And do some kids get exploited during internships? Absolutely. Do I feel like I was exploited on some internships? Absolutely. But at the same time, I learned the ways to treat people and the ways not to treat people. And I feel like a lot of the 15 to like 25 now, they need more of those experiences. Instead, they need to get off their phone and have more of those experiences.
Yep. They'll definitely learn how the world works, how
Mm-hmm.
hard it is, how hard it can be. But yeah, life lessons, if you're once you're physically doing something, especially day in and day out, and you understand, especially if you're passionate about whatever that profession is, or maybe you don't want to be in that profession, you decide to go back to school for something
Yeah,
completely different. Like now is the
absolutely.
time to learn all that stuff.
Yes, sir.
All right. Last question is this before we wrap up and ask where we can support you and all that other fun stuff is
Mm-hmm.
if your life was a comic book, what would its title be and what would its soundtrack be?
Whew. I love Seinfeld.
Mm-hmm.
I think Seinfeld is like the greatest like sitcom ever, because it's about nothing, but it's about everything.
True.
That's the beauty of Seinfeld, that it's about everything. And it's about all of these like little things about life that we take for granted, and maybe things that we take too much for granted. And I could definitely see a comic being just this like silly whimsical thing of like just this guy working nonstop every single day, but then still finding an hour to throw darts um every day. And he's in a dart league, and all the crazy characters that he comes across. Like, I mean, I was playing darts like 6 months ago in a league, and this guy on one team only had one ear, and then the other guy on his team only had one arm. And it's just like they stood next to each other. And yes, so like you're thinking exactly like what I'm
Yeah.
thinking, and I'm just like, what is going on here? And it's just like I meet on the, if you take the bus and the trains in New York City, you meet so many like interesting people. And it's just like I think like the comic would just be like this tale of like this guy just wanting to do like really good things, but just being surrounded by so much wackiness. It would be like that Michael Douglas film Falling Down
Mm-hmm.
without
Yeah.
without any of like the, like, how does this guy keep all of it together and just do like, I'll come home from work and I'll just like want to just stick my head in a pillow and just go to sleep, and my kids will be like, daddy, 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 and I'm just like, all right, let's go. And I have to like press the switch and just like let all that stuff go. And my wife is great that way. She'll be like, tell me when they go to bed. When they go to bed, you can tell me everything, but I need you at your best, at your strongest for like the next 3 hours. So soundtrack, my playlist is insane.
Sure.
I mean, it would go from Billy Joel to like Jim Croce to like Metallica
Oh,
to
yeah.
like Def Leppard and Queen and Prince and oh my god, what's the name of the band that sings Through the Fire and Flames?
Oh, Dragon Force.
Dragon Force, and like all over the place. Like I was listening to One Direction cleaning my house before I came down for the
Okay.
podcast. I was listening to Diana by One Direction. Um so, and then like my daughter listens to all this wacky stuff, and like I got into like K-pop because of
Yeah,
my
yeah.
daughter. So it's just like it would be like how Seinfeld is about everything. The soundtrack to this would just be all over the place. It would just be like 1 second this, 1 second that. Like, yeah, Rick Astley would definitely get thrown in
Sure.
there once in a while. Elton John,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it would be all over the place. It'd be unpredictable.
The best of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and beyond.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Well, Patrick, I do hate to say it, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely, man. It was a total pleasure. You're awesome.
Oh, I appreciate that. And you're such an amazing person. I'm sure we haven't even touched a tenth of what you've done in your lifetime, but hopefully we've hit the highlights of what you've done and showcase Condrey and everything like that as well too. For those that want to support yourself, Condrey, Legacy Comics, things like that, how can we support you in this wide world of the internet?
So the easy way is, I mean, just go on legacycomics.com. It's comix.com/shop. We have tons of digital and physical comics. We also have trading card comics. So it essentially looks like a trading card. And then in the back, there's a QR code. You scan the QR and the comic will open up on your phone. We have tons of comics. You can go there, legacycomics.com/shop. You can also go on our Facebook, Legacy Comics, on Facebook, Instagram, X. We're all on there. Everything is updated daily. Our website is updated daily. We have a weekly podcast called Talking Comics, where I discuss like the inner workings of Legacy Comics and what it's like to be an independent creator. You can go on my Facebook, facebook.com/Patrick Hickey Jr. I update my Facebook like a madman. My Instagram is updated several times a day. My TikTok is updated several times a day. I just really like to try and show what it's like to be a creator and a family man all at the same time, and just to be a super duper geek. So if you like all of that geeky stuff, like you've reached the right place.
Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. The podcast, just search Two Geeks Talking. That's TWO Geeks Talking, wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.